What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the basement. We are back with our buddy Brent Lengel, the author, creator of Snow White Zombie Apocalypse. Buddy, welcome back to the show, man.
Happy to be back.
So we are going to talk about SWZA 3, which I have a few copies in front of me, thanks to the last Kickstarter. And you currently have SWZA 4 up on its Kickstarter. It is already successful.
We're, last I checked, 120% funded.
Awesome.
So, yeah, I'm really excited. The series is moving in a good direction, and the fourth book is just, it's the fourth book is like the first 1 through 4 is like the first major arc of the series. So like I'm basing the plot on the 2-hour play. Like when the fourth book ends, that's when people get up for intermission.
I was actually going to ask you how many books the first arc was going to cover. So you're getting used to this, man. You're just answering my questions before I can even ask them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you can consider it half the first arc as well. Like it's the whole series. This issue 4 ends Luana's run. That's the artist who did issue 2 to 4. And because she got a job with Image, and also we had luckily already planned on ending her run at 4, because what I wanted to do with the series was switch artists every so often, like whenever there were major story beats, to make it kind of like Sandman, because 1, Sandman is amazing, but 2, you hear fairy tales from multiple storytellers, so I feel like it's really cool to see a comic series about fairy tales have multiple artists to give it that feel.
That's a really cool idea. Yeah. And this way, you can switch up and give other indie creators, other indie artists a new job. That's pretty dope. So let me ask you this. Are these issues still seeing publication through Scout Comics after the Kickstarter and after everybody gets their special editions?
Correct. Yeah. In fact, Scout is set to do 2 relaunches of the first issue, and then they're going to continue with the rest of it. They're also going to be releasing possibly a legendary version of the first issue, because the ink work that Hyando did, it was so good, and was one of the 2 Ringo Awards we were nominated for. They're going to send out like a version of SWZA #1 that is just his inks, so you can see like every line he put in, which is really incredible.
That's pretty dope. So no color at all, just pure black and white ink work.
Yeah, and then they'll also they're going to release SWZA, because the last one was put out as a one-shot. They're going to release a new SWZA #1. They're actually going to break #1 into 2 issues. It'll be SWZA #1, SWZA #2, 3, 4, 5. And so like the Scout release will be SWZA 1 to 5, but the Kickstarter release is SWZA 1 to 4. And just to make it very confusing, it'll cover the same story beats and same pages.
That's going to drive a few collectors crazy, but at least I'll know, so I won't have to worry about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, luckily, the ones that I've been releasing on Kickstarter are all Autonomous Collective labeled.
So now this is your brand. That's your company.
Correct.
When did you form that? Was that in between SWZA 1 and 2, or did you always have it?
No, so Autonomous Collective, I started, by the way, it's a Monty Python reference.
Okay.
But no, I started Autonomous Collective as my theater company in New York. And we produced a number of my plays under the Autonomous Collective logo. And then also we did some co-productions with my theater company now, State of Play. So I'd had the business for a while. And then when it came time for me to start publishing my books on Kickstarter, I decided to just continue to use that. And it's been terrific since then.
So now I'm a little upset at myself. I consider myself a pretty good Monty Python fan, but I don't get that reference.
Oh, you don't? So do you remember when he meets the political peasant in Holy Grail?
I think I do.
Yeah. So there's Dennis, the political peasant, in Monty Python's Quest for the Holy Grail. And he comes up and he asks him, like, who lives in that castle? And he's like, no. And the peasant's like, no one lives there. We're in a narco-syndicalist commune. King Arthur's like, what? He's like, yeah, we have an executive officer, but every decision by that officer must be ratified by. And eventually, like, King Arthur just gets annoyed and starts like beating him up. And the whole time Dennis is yelling, oh, now see the violence inherent in the system. Violence inherent in the system. I'm being repressed.
Now I remember. Yes.
And King Arthur throws him down and he says, like, bloody peasant. And he's like, oh, you see, that's what I'm talking about. My favorite thing about that, by the way, is everybody gets that one wrong because they think that Monty Python is making fun of activists. But if you actually look at the scene, Dennis is 100% right. And like the whole joke is he's just ridiculously ahead of his time.
Clearly, I mean, whether you're looking at the year the film was made or even, especially the year that it's set in, either way, he's completely ahead of his time.
Yeah.
So let's dive into SWZA issue 3. We now have our heroes running from the big bad wolf and his minions, and the woodsman kind of pulls the hero maneuver like, listen, I saw this cabin, looked pretty sketchy, but hey, it's a place to lay low. You go, run there, and I'll hold them off. Mm-hmm. And so they go to this mysterious cabin, and that the thing I found pretty cool about this particular scene was Snow White actually proved useful for once. Like, she seems to know a little bit more about what's going on. Maybe that's her experience with witches in the first place, but she's looking around like this isn't good at all. And she's mysteriously able to read the book of magic that's just casually on the table. She looks up and sees, the pentagram, the witch's symbol on the ceiling, which, I mean, if you've ever watched an episode of Supernatural, that does not mean anything good.
I'm a big fan of Supernatural, so I'm glad you made that connection.
It's a great show, man. I love the revelation, too. They're like, it's gingerbread. Who builds a house out of gingerbread? Like, the self-awareness is what drew the Pete's Basement show to this story in the first place, and I'm glad to see that humor is staying true, in the future issues.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's really important to me, like, with SWZA, I didn't want to make, like, just, like, a, kind of like a novelty book to just kind of shock people or whatever.
Right.
But the humor, to me, was really important, because both in my approach, because I kind of take my approach from the Grand Guignol style storytelling, which was a French theater school, where what they would do is they would do a horror play and a comedy and then a horror and then a comedy. And so what they found was that the heightened state from the comedy played off against the horror and vice versa. So scarier things were scarier and funnier things were funnier just because you had that contrast. And then also just zombies are like an inherently ridiculous idea. And so, like, to take, and particularly like you take fairy tale characters and you fuse those worlds together, I don't think you can do that like 100% straight. Like, everyone in the book is like, they're 100% serious. This is their reality. They're trying to survive. But at the same time, the book itself is kind of nodding and winking at you.
Mm-hmm. Dude, I consistently laugh my ass off when it comes to these. And one of the things that really amused me was when Charming is reading this dude's poem and he gets to the end, and to quote it, "For 'twas only when you'd see a heart best as beast and foul, you'd send such wholesome arg." And it's like, he must have died while writing it. If he died while writing it, he wouldn't bother to write arg.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, for some reason, the silliness of that particular line just sat with me for the rest of the issue.
Well, I can't take total credit because that is another Monty Python reference, actually.
Why don't I remember these things?
You got to watch Holy Grail again, man.
I seriously do. You know what the problem is? I latched on to Life of Brian like a little too much, and I have forgotten my Holy Grail. I have to go back to that because I only remember like the knights who say knee and now leave or I shall insult you a second time.
Yeah. the French taunters.
Yeah, and that was one of the worst accents ever. So I can just get trashed in the comments for that one.
Well, I think the French accent was pretty. In fact, they had a line was like, "Why do you think I have this outrageous accent?" Yeah. I referenced Monty Python a lot in the series, I realized, because in Reign of the Blood-Covered King Part 1, I also referenced Monty Python with the peasant who gets his fields wrecked by the giant is named Dennis. And the king goes, "I didn't know you were called Dennis," which, of course, goes right back to the political peasant thing,
right?
The imprint of Autonomous Collective. There's, by the way, and this is a thing about SWZA, like, I'm a big fan of, like, 6-person jokes. So there are a lot of references within SWZA that people get. And like the more well-read you are, are, the more you're going to be able to pull out of the book and the more jokes you're going to be able to find. That's something that I learned from The Simpsons, and it's something that I've always really appreciated. So yeah, so there are jokes in this book that I think pretty much only I am actually going to get, but I think they're very funny.
Consider, if you will, when you're finished with this series, a future Kickstarter reward of here's all the in-jokes that you probably missed. And just
Gosh.
Say, this is what I'm here for, man.
That's a great idea. Yeah. Now it's funny. Yeah. Now it's funny, by the way, that you mention the poem, because that was actually written by my friend, who's a great writer, Noah Frank Daniels. He paid to have a cameo in SWZA, and he said, "Give me a good death, a death worthy of a writer." And that body that is on the floor with the pen in its eye.
He's the guy with the quill in his eye.
Yep, and I told him to write a very bad poem. And so, like, that's his poem in the book, and it's really exciting that I'm able to do that with some people.
I'm glad you said that. Like, I know they said in the comic book that, wow, that poem was really terrible, but I'm not really like, cultured like that. Poetry was never really my forte, so I don't know if it's a bad poem or not. I just felt like maybe I'm missing something. Like, there's no rhyme scheme, there's no real meter, everything's broken up. I don't know what's happening here. Yeah. I don't even know what this shit is about.
Yeah, in my head, by the way, I think there's a lot of innuendo in that poem. Actually, I think it's about him being very into a woman.
I'm gonna have to go back and reread that just to see.
But yeah, so that one of these days, maybe if we get enough, if we get funded enough, I'll have whatever artist I'm working with at the time, like, draw that character's story and how he wound up getting killed there. I believe he got killed by the creature that is living in SWZA number 3, which we'll probably get along to talking about as well.
I do believe so, since that shining happy face at the window did kind of look fairly familiar. Now, this is obviously, with the Gingerbread House, we are looking into Hansel and Gretel and the evil witch in the woods. And Gretel, it appears, the woodsman has removed her head and stuck it in a pouch.
He is after the big bad wolf. Gretel was bit by the big bad wolf. She joined his pack. Right.
And she had the sharp fangs and everything.
Yeah. She's at the beginning of issue 2. She's the wolf girl who has killed somebody, and then they follow the trail of breadcrumbs until they come upon like a campsite, and she attacks the campsite and comes up with a mouthful of feathers because it was a trap, and the woodsman attacks them and kills the 2 wolves with him and beheads her. Now, her brother is also there,
but he hasn't been bitten. He's just like feral.
Yeah. He's a feral child, basically, who's been stuck living in this zombie world. And he's been living in the rafters and under the floorboards of the cabin.
That's great. Okay, so we can take it basically as the nursery rhyme concluded. They killed the witch and shoved her in the oven and whatnot.
Yep, they killed the witch, shoved her in the oven. Hansel's got some experience with things trying to eat him, so he's been able to avoid the zombies for the most part, but he's kind of, reverted to a feral state, kind of Gollum-like.
I was gonna, dude, the whole scene when he's talking to the head and kind of just talking to himself, total Gollum vibes, man. Absolutely. Picked up on that immediately.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of Lord of the Rings, so it was really fun to write kind of a twist on Hansel.
As everyone should be, everyone with taste.
And also, like, there's just that zombie trope of, like, the person who's gone crazy. One of the things that people will find as we go further and further into SWZA is I tend to hit a lot of the classic beats of zombie fiction. And not all of them, though I will try to get all of them. But the idea is to, I'm doing a mashup of a number of genres, and there's certain beats and themes that appear in zombie fiction that I want to have appear here, but put my own little twist on them. And so, like, the person who's lost their mind in the zombie apocalypse, that's Hansel.
I could not ask for a better rendition honestly.
Yeah.
Because for those of you out in Pete's Basement Land who are not aware, I too was one of those people who, on the last Kickstarter, opted to have my charming visage drawn into the book. And I actually appear twice, thankfully. That's pretty dope. The first is this page showing up right here. That's me in the background. I'm one of the Big Bad Wolf's wolfy minions. And I'm looking forward to a gruesome death and hopefully chomping down on somebody sometime soon. And also, now a lot of you have never met Teenage Pete, but Teenage Pete is, in fact, the feral Hansel. So that's dude, it's so awesome. I honestly thought they were one and the same. I didn't realize they were two totally different characters. I was just this like feral maniac. That's so fucking funny.
Well, it was, I had told Luana, because we had wanted Hansel to be young for the scene as opposed to as grown because of how the dialogue goes. And I had wanted, like, there was two ways we could have done that. And I really wanted you to be Hansel because, you know, the people who do put the money behind the series are the reason I'm able to do this. And especially those who pay for the cameos in the books. I really want to make sure that, like, you guys get your money's worth. So, you know, for instance, Noah got a great cameo out of that. You did as well. At the beginning, actually, one of my favorite ones is the Gingerbread Man. That is actually another cameo. In fact, everyone in that scene is cameoing. That is the Gingerbread Man and also the Rel and Ariel, who are two filmmakers that I know and have worked with and have supported the series. What's really fun is, like, I get thrown these curveballs by people who pay to be in the series, and it actually winds up like stoking my creativity, and then I'm able to do things that I never would have done otherwise. Like, I don't know if I would have had this cold open in the book if I hadn't been looking to work those three people in.
Mm-hmm. Honestly, it was a pretty fun opening, and you know, I'm sitting there reading like, oh, cool, he's the Gingerbread Man. Like, can we eat him already? And the second panel where he's kind of in the background, you don't realize the height difference until you actually get to the fifth panel where he's only about this big, standing on the rock in front of the fire. I was like, oh, shit, he's the Gingerbread Man. Okay, great. And you know, he's sitting there like, uh-oh, when he sees the big bad wolf. And you know, I'm assuming he survives this because, I mean, he's little, so he can probably scamper away.
He's very fast if you read the original Gingerbread Man.
Yeah,
like,
well,
nothing could catch
nobody
him.
can keep up with the Gingerbread Man.
Yeah, so he's maybe he'll be my series' Quicksilver.
You made a reference to it in that third panel. It's like, you nuts, he's fast as shit. Like, we can't let him go.
Yeah. The other thing I love about that also is in panel 5, I'm telling a story here. It's got everything: fencing, fighting, torture. That's Princess Bride. Yes.
Now that one I actually did pick up on, and I took a photo of that panel and sent it to the same friend that I watched Supernatural with, because she's a huge fan of Princess Bride. Anyone from the 80s really should be.
And that is one of the greatest movies in like American cinema history, in my opinion. I think it's just absolutely phenomenal. And so, yeah, I couldn't help but put that in there.
So we leave off now where Hansel is just kind of puttering around the gingerbread house, and he falls into the woodsman's trap. And now they have him. He's cornered, and
we move into
issue 4. Right. So issue 4, the Kickstarter is on. Tell us a little bit about the story. No spoilers. And then we're going to move into my favorite part and everybody else's, the ooey gooey comic book rewards.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's going on with issue 4 is issue 4 is going to pick up exactly where issue 3 left off. And this is there's a lot of story threads that are moving together here. The Woodsman has put them all in danger for his own agenda. He is very driven. He's going to kill the big bad wolf, or so he thinks. I'm not going to tell you what's going to happen with that, but I'll tell you it could go either way. The Woodsman has his plan to take out the big bad wolf, which involves Gretel's head. And he was aware of Hansel in the cabin, but he hadn't made the connection between Hansel and Gretel yet. So he has no idea what's going on with that.
So he didn't actually expect that little, he called it like the whatever creature it is that's lurking around outside. He didn't expect him to come looking for the head.
Exactly. He expected him to be there because he's tried to trap him, which you'll find out at the beginning of issue 4, because he kept that from them as well. But like, no, he had no idea that the head and Hansel were connected. And similarly, that's how the everything is kind of building to a head and a major confrontation. Also, there is another secret that the Woodsman has that's going to be revealed in this issue, which deals with Prince Charming and some of the other supplemental material that goes into SWZA. And that will be very, very interesting when it comes out. I'm not going to say exactly what it is. But right now, they're in this abandoned cabin in the woods. They're safe for the moment, but as you can see, things are a little weird. And if anybody has good horror movie instincts, that this is the point when the shit hits the fan.
Precisely. And one of those, I'd say, clumps of turd that's going to hit the fan is something I drew on from one of Rapunzel's lines was, they're not necessarily smart, but they do remember things. Like, they kind of remember who they were beforehand, which, gives a new light to like the whole zombie trope of just being these mindless, wandering, biting creatures. They kind of know what's going on. So, as formidable as the Woodsman might be, the big bad wolf obviously still retains his big bad wolfiness. Oh yeah, and he's not so stupid as to just go walk right into a trap.
Oh yeah, well, like the wolf. So the wolves in this series, like, they have been a huge threat from the very beginning. The Granny Wolf is what killed Little Red Riding Hood at the beginning and turned her. So the only reason Little Red Riding Hood didn't kill Prince Charming was Rapunzel had already killed Granny Wolf. Well, she actually doesn't kill Granny Wolf. She leaves her dismembered in the worst state possible in issue 2.
Yeah, that was pretty fantastic.
Yeah, or maybe issue 1. But yeah, I said, I was like, man, can you make something a little like that circle of torsos on Game of Thrones, but alive? Yeah. So I mean, the wolves are exceptionally dangerous, and the big bad wolf, the Three Little Pigs big bad wolf that we get our first glimpse of in this story, he's even more dangerous than the one that Rapunzel fought and killed. And if you'll remember, Rapunzel did not have the easiest time taking out the Granny Wolf with Granny in her stomach.
The pig wolves were a nice touch to this. I did not expect that. I should have expected that. But when I'm looking at them, I'm like, oh shit, it's the Three Little Pigs because the big bad wolf. Yeah. And it's funny reading through this, not like hilarious funny, but it's funny in that ironic kind of sense that things you aren't necessarily expecting kind of hit you out of nowhere. Like that did with me. Like, oh shit, it's the Three Little Pigs. That's cool because they, big bad wolf. Dirt. It's just fucking fairy tale. So like, shit like that is, those little nuances that you don't know what's going to happen when you turn the page and kind of what story, what fairy tale or fable you're going to accidentally fall right the smack in the middle to.
Oh yeah, and like there's a lot of really, really deep cuts with regard to fairy tales and lore. Like a lot of my process, I will when I don't know what to do, I go back to the text and I try to find a fairy tale and read through it and find, okay, what are the really weird things about this story? Where do I latch on? And like I'm writing right now, issue 6. Is being written, and I finished issue 5. Issue 5 and 6 have a number of fairy tales that they're pulling from, but one of them, it's the saga of Frolf Crocky from like Scandinavian folklore.
Definitely don't know that one.
Oh, it is so grim and frostbitten and metal. I'm having a ton of fun with it. It's also heavily influenced by D&D and a couple of other things we'll find when we do get to it. You're gonna love it though. But Frolf Crocky centers around the king and his half-elf witch queen sister who overthrows him with an army of the dead.
As one does when they need to. Yes, certainly.
Yeah,
I actually just read a meme today about raising an army of the dead. So yeah, it just seems like the thing to do.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So do you have like a whole bookshelf worth of different, fairy tales from different time and places across the world. Like, obviously the Grimm's fairy tale collection is the one everybody knows, but there's myriad other ones out there. Obviously, this Scandinavian one I've never heard of.
Oh, yeah. Well, I have a lot of sources that I pull from. Sometimes it's just me searching on the internet and trying to find random weird fairy tales that I think sound cool. Sometimes I do. My wife is really into fairy tales, and so she has some volumes that I'll go through and pour over. And then also I've really been into fairy tales, myths, and mythology since I was a kid. So I have a head full of this stuff, and my brain tends to latch onto really specific things from these stories and remember them in entirely too much detail.
That's one of those like idyllic memories for just random stuff. I always tell people, like, you want to know what I had for lunch yesterday? It's anyone's guess. But if you want a cartoon reference from 1984, I got you covered. Bang. He-Man, G.I. Joe, Bugs Bunny. It's all running around in here. Don't know shit from physics class, but I got that.
Absolutely. So yeah, I mean, the internet has helped a lot too, just because if I don't have something immediately, I can usually find it, or the process of trying to find something oftentimes will lead me to, even if I don't find what I am looking for, I will find the key. I'll know what my story needs and then just create it out of whole cloth. There's a great podcast called Myths and Legends by a guy, I think he's from Cincinnati, actually. I don't know if he's still there, but it's a terrific podcast to go to sleep to. And they do a lot of fairy tale retelling. So if I hear one on there that I think sounds interesting, I'll go and look up the original tale.
That's pretty. Now, by retellings, you mean like they put their own twist or spin on it?
Yeah. It's basically the podcast guy rewrites every fairy tale in history, like in his words, and tells them with his particular way and cadence. He's usually takes a more comedic bent to everything. But I think it's a phenomenal podcast, and again, really great to fall asleep to, because I'm a vampire. I don't sleep.
I'm the same way, man. So let's get into the rewards for SWZA issue 4. What do you have for us?
Oh my gosh. Okay. So we have, first we have 3 new variant covers. First, we have the 4th variant cover by artist Brian Silverbacks, who is put in more variant covers to the series than any other artist. He was actually the very first person at Dragon Con before COVID and everything. He and we met, and he offered to do the first variant and did a phenomenal job with it. So now, not only can you collect SWZA, but you can collect one particular artist's covers, from 1 to 4.
That's pretty really cool.
Exciting. Yeah. We also have a variant cover by Kit Buss of Critical Role. Critical Role being a very famous Dungeons and Dragons podcast that everybody should check out. Well, podcast and also web series. And then we have another variant cover, and I'm really excited. This is the first time I've worked with this artist. This is Carl Moline, who his variant cover, he worked on Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the comic series.
Okay.
And Route 666. He's a terrific guy, and it's so cool because Buffy, like the actual series, both the comics and the TV show, heavily influenced SWZA. I don't know if we would have Rapunzel the way she is if we didn't have Buffy. And starting in a couple of issues, probably around SWZA 7 or 8, there's a new villain's going to get introduced who, in my head, sounds exactly like Spike from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So it's a really, really nice to be able to work with someone whose creativity was part of a property that influenced me as heavily as it did. As far as the other rewards we actually have this SWZA pin. It's an
that's really cool.
Yeah, gunmetal. It goes perfect on your jean jacket or wherever else you want to put it. The logo actually on there, that is the original logo from the play, which is
that a brain?
That is a brain with a skull inside the brain matter. Yeah, there's like a screaming skull inside the brain and a worm coming out of it in the shape of an apple. So that's the original SWZA pin. And then I also have a actual coin from Prince Charming's kingdom.
That's cool.
Yeah, this is a satin gold finish. It's not actually gold, just looks like that. But this features Prince Charming's father, the blood-covered king. Half of his face has been carved into a skull. It's based on hobo coins. Luana and the guy who made the original SWZA thing, Eric Moore, are the ones who designed this. It says on the top, Regius Carnem Sanguinis, which is royal flesh, royal blood in Latin. And then on the back, we have the seal of the kingdom with the kingdom's motto and a coat of arms. The motto is Omnes Una Manet Nox, which is the real-life Valar Morghulis. It's Latin for one night awaits us all. And the actual coat of arms shows a boar, an evil unicorn, and a monstrous boar, an evil unicorn, and a bird with tentacle legs. And this is a reference to the fairy tale, The Brave Little Tailor, which Jack the Giant Slayer is kind of tied into because he's a 7-in-1 blow. If you read that,
I remember that. Yes.
Yeah, if you read Brave Little Tailor, there is a bird that he uses at one point to outwit a giant, and two of the tasks that he's given is to kill an evil boar and also to kill a evil unicorn. So that's a reference to that fairy tale. So as you can see, like a ton of stuff has been poured into this coin. There's even like fake cuts and indentations in it. So
like on the ridge on the side and everything. That's really cool.
Yeah, and it's 2 inches by 2 inches. It feels amazing in your hand. And is it magic? Yeah, probably. Try making a wish. So we've got that. We also have 2 new prints for Snow White Zombie. The first one is by Chris Hamer of Scout Comics. He does a series called The Adventures of Byron, which is a fun offbeat, and he did a cover featuring a new character which has not been introduced yet. So that's sort of one of the secret characters that is going to pop up very soon. And then also we've got Adam Bryce Thomas. He did one of the covers last time. He is the artist for IDW Sonic and Samurai Jack. And he did one that I call Big Bad Showdown, which I think is the most awesome image about SWZA, where it's the Woodsman getting ready to fight his version of the Big Bad.
I'm looking at this right now, and it's really dope.
Yeah, he wanted it inspired a little bit by Berserk.
Yeah, it's really cool. You're going to make me make room on my walls for this stuff, man. These tarot cards are really cool, too.
They really are. That came from me just not being able to come up with something to give people kept like annihilating anytime I'd set out like a stretch goal. They just charged through it like within like a day. And so I was like, what am I going to give them now? And the tarot cards just jumped out. And each tarot card, like there is a direct comparison between the character in the tarot and the actual meaning of the tarot card. So, for instance, Rapunzel is the chariot, because the chariot is about like destroying obstacles. The king, the blood-covered king, in his half zombied, half regular form is he's directly comparable to the Emperor in both positions for the Emperor card, and like the giant destroying the castle is just the perfect card for the tower. And I'm hoping that we will continue to get overfunded if we can break 15,000. We're up to 13 by now, so just a little less than 2,000 more at this point. If we can break that, we will be releasing another set, and at a certain level, people will get a free card sent to them, and then they'll be able to add on the rest, at the end of the campaign.
Well, hopefully the Pete's Basement fans can chime in on that and get us over that hump. I will personally be sending in my contribution. Probably by the time this hits the YouTube airwaves, I will have already contributed. I just have to go down the Kickstarter rewards and pretty much just find whichever one appeals the most to me. You have always been one to have like really kind of cool, crazy rewards. I mean, there was the trip to Iceland after all. So anything along those lines this time around? So
I do have I put the trip to Iceland on hold because of COVID.
Right.
I will be going back to that one probably. But beyond that, I actually have a reward. There are still rewards available for cameos in the book. There's quick cameos at lower levels, and then as you get a little higher and higher, there's deeper levels of cameos that are available. I would recommend, if people are thinking about it, to take advantage of these really quickly, because we're getting to a point in the series where it becomes more and more creatively difficult to introduce new characters. So especially if you want to have a recurring character, I would get that while it's still available, because further on in the Kickstarters, I may not be able to do it anymore. And then I also have a bi-weekly masterclass where people can take advantage of all of the knowledge and experience that I have acquired beating my head against the wall in the New York theater scene. Also, creating comics and, creating a twice Ringo nominated comic. So I can basically help you write whatever you're working on at the time. We meet bi-weekly. It's a very small class of people. And we just go over what you're working on, where you want to get it, and what you want to get out of it. It's something that's very, it's pricey because it takes up a lot of time, but it's something that I really could have benefited from when I was starting out and trying to get a feel for how you do art, because, there's not one answer to that question. So those are the really big rewards that we have available now. And there's also some, so all of the Carla Cohen covers have actually been sold out everywhere. This was a limited run. It is the most, it is the absolute rarest of the rare covers. However, I was able to find some rare misprints of the Carla Cohen cover. Honestly, it's not even really an extreme misprint. It's the gloss is a little scratchy in certain areas, but that's it. And those are available on the campaign, as well as the very last few of the Brian Silverback's SWZA #1.
That's arguably my favorite cover. I had to jump in on that one.
Oh yeah, and it's a phenomenal one. And I'll tell you, once these are sold, they are sold. And to my knowledge, the only person that has copies of these to sell now are me. So for this and the next few Kickstarters, you'll be getting the last of those, and those will very quickly become, I think, the most rare and sought after covers as the series continues to get more popular and as Scout goes and reprints and we start putting out our trades.
Awesome. So before we conclude, 2 quick questions. One, how soon after this will we see the Kickstarter for issue 5?
Pretty quickly. As soon, I'm working on a faster time frame, and I plan to launch the Kickstarter for issue 5 towards the end of this year, but still I want it done, so I'll probably be launching it around the November time frame.
Okay.
But between now and then, I'm going to be launching a Kickstarter for for the first trade. So it'll be a bundle of issues 1 to 4. So for those people that don't want to buy the individual issues, you can actually get the trade. And then I'll be launching, as soon as that one's done, I'll be launching the one for issue 5.
Okay.
And I'm really, really excited because we're introducing a new artist with that one that I think everybody's going to be really impressed with. And the story is, it's some of my best writing. And it's, as we've talked about here, kind of grim and metal because I'm working with the Scandinavian mythology.
That sounds pretty dope. And we can't wait for that to hit, because obviously when it does, you'll be back on the Peach Basement Show to talk about it. So you've got another project in the works as well that is a total departure from Snow White Zombie Apocalypse. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So those of you people who are just now getting to know me through this comic might not know what people who know me as a playwright is that when I write, the stuff that I write about is incredibly diverse. And so the next story that I'm really excited to tell is actually a biopic / war epic about the anarchist Che Guevara, a man by the name of Buenaventura Durruti, who was born like in the late 1800s in Spain, became a radical union activist and bandit, stole over 1 million pesetas from the Bank of Spain to finance the revolution and to give back to the people. And then when Spain's military went fascist, he took up the defense of the city of Barcelona and defeated the Spanish military, like for the, I think, first and only time that a modern mechanized army has ever been decisively defeated by a civilian force. And then he raised an army of between 6,000 and 10,000 anarchists and marched on Madrid to face General Franco. Well, not to give too many spoilers, but died mysteriously after winning his first battle. He's a phenomenal guy. Like, just learning about his life, it's basically Braveheart in Spain. And I have a terrific artist, Jaime Infante, who is Spanish, who's drawing the series, and it'll cover these events within his life, starting with his imprisonment in a French prison after a failed attempt to assassinate the Spanish king. So people that know my writing, you'll still have the same types of writing and storytelling that we've had, but it's a very different story than SWZA, but it's just as action packed and just as crazy. And it's something that like a lot of people don't know about. So
I've never heard of it myself. So, and this is all just pure historically accurate. You're not putting any what can I say to that, nuances or anything like that, any fictionalized aspects.
So it's historical fiction, but I try to be as true to the historical record as I can. History doesn't work like stories, and that's why we need stories to understand it a lot of the time. Right,
to just kind of flesh it all out a bit more. Yeah,
things that basically, like, I will be cleaving as close to the historical record as I can, but my goal is not to be historical primarily. It is to tell a really good, compelling story that captures the essence of Durruti's life and who he was, as opposed to just give you a bunch of facts.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, so that's kind of my approach to it. But yeah, it's called Durruti, Shadow of the People. If you want to know more about Buenaventura Durruti, just Google his name. There's a ton of stuff out about him on Wikipedia, and there's at least one documentary. There's also a documentary you can watch called Living Utopia, which was put up about this period where the Spanish where the anarchists were in control of the city of Catalonia and the entire Argonne front. So basically like all of northern Spain.
Wow.
Yeah.
So when can we expect that Kickstarter to hit?
That will be very, very soon. I'm basically just waiting on color.
Okay.
And I'm planning on launching that very quickly, and I'll get that to you guys once I'm able to.
Cool. We look forward to it. I mean, I don't know anything about it, but that doesn't mean I don't want to learn. I do love historical comic books. There was been a lot of stuff that I've learned, specifically like World War II and Revolutionary War, stuff like that, from just graphic novel comic books that I never would have expected. But I've learned more from reading things like that than I ever would have out of a textbook. Yeah. So that sounds really cool, man. I wish you a lot of luck with it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Please do check it out. And please do pledge and give to the SWZA Kickstarter. It's really important because the only way I get to make these comics is if people support it on the Kickstarters. And, I really appreciate everything that people are able to do. And you get like some really awesome stuff from it. So thank you.
You do always have really great rewards. So thank you for that.
All right. Cool. Well, I got to run. But
I understand. I do as well, man. Thank you for coming on the show. We wish you the best of luck, guys. Hit up the Kickstarter, can kick in if you can. There's awesome stuff there. SWZA is a great story. I love it, and that's why I always present it to you. You know how to hit us up. questions@PetesBasement.com, Facebook.com/PetesBasement, Instagram, Twitter, etc. @PetesBasement. Brent, before we get out of here, tell everybody how to find you on the social medias.
So just Google my name, Brenton Lengel. If you go to my Twitter, @Brenton Lengel, you will actually find my link tree that has all of my social media on it. My website, www.brentonlengel.com, or search Brenton Lengel on YouTube.
Fantastic, buddy. We will see you soon. Lots of luck with the Kickstarter, and lots of luck with the next one and all future projects. Have a good one, buddy.
Yep,
Salud.
You too. Salud. Bye.
Pete's Basement is copyrighted
2020.
Ripped Productions. All rights reserved, so go fuck yourself.